Well, thank you all for coming out here, for coming to idOS Connect. So at idOS Connect today, we're focused on three main tracks, identity, data, and privacy. And so this is the data track. And this panel will be talking about data composability and some of the real-world impacts it enables. As our moderator brought up in the introduction, the idea of data composability is this notion that data on an open and decentralized platform can be mixed, matched, and reused. And so when one data problem is solved, it only needs to be solved once. Up here, we have three leaders in our industry that are all working to enable data composability. And so, yeah, let's just start off with a round of intros. So if you just want to tell us a little bit about yourself, your project, and how your project is enabling data composability, that would be great. So, Paul, can you lead us off?
Yeah, sure. So I am Paul, head of ecosystem at Kwil. At Kwil, we are building a decentralized data lake, but to be more precise, a decentralized validation layer. So what we are doing is like making sure that between a data source and a decentralized storage solution, the data are uncorrupted. The purpose of all of that is to like be sure that people can use those data one store, for example, on Arweave, on a trustless environment for them to scale and to build product with it.
Awesome. Let's see, Dimitri, you want to go next?
Yeah, we are at Subsquid. We also built a decentralized data lake and a query engine. So our mission is to actually give access to this data through a powerful query engine. So you actually can extract this data in a very efficient way. And in particular, our vision is that the missing piece in Web3 is a global storage, like a global place for all the data across all the different chains, and not only on-chain but also all off-chain data that you can efficiently query and compose together. So in particular, if the state of the application is spread across multiple rollups and different chains, you can actually efficiently batch query it, aggregate, and reconstruct the state on your indexer that can be run anywhere independently of the data layer.
Great, thank you. And Zoe, can you please give us an introduction to yourself and follow?
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Yeah, I'm Zoe. I'm VP of Growth and Partner at Phala Network, and we provide a decentralized computation cloud where we power CPU for any decentralized application. We have over 200,000 virtual nodes or workers that provide the CPU, also secured by trusted execution environments. And on top of this infrastructure that we provide, this decentralized cloud, we have a contract that is a program model that actually connects on-chain and off-chain information that I think we dive deeper into throughout this panel.
Absolutely. So great. So let's dive into the first topic of the discussion, which are what are the real-world impacts that data composability is enabling? So, Dima, we'll start with you and with Subsquid. I know you just talked a bit about how Subsquid can allow you to compose across multiple chains, whether it's a layer 1, a layer 2, a roll-up. But what are some of the real-world impacts you are seeing, or real-world use cases you are seeing builders use that data from the Subsquid platform?
I think the key breakthrough that can be enabled through this is super lightweight and fast indexing. And this is something that I anticipate happening like in the cycle where there will be a lot of user-centric application. Because right now indexing is usually a separate platform or a separate service where it is deployed like in the cloud or, for example, into some network. But as long as you have very fast indexing, you can put it into the application itself. And it enables completely different use cases where you have access, for example, to the private keys of the user, because this indexer runs on the client where you have access to the user keys, in particular in a user wallet. And in this respect, you can aggregate different data from different chains together with the off-chain data, with the user private data. And moreover, it is a lot more scalable infrastructure because you don't have to service all the client requests, but instead all the information is kept locally. And I see like really a lot of potential here. And it's basically like a shifting the computation towards the client user devices or like a web page directly.
Awesome, thank you. And so I guess going to Zoe from Fala next. So I know Fala has this idea of fat contracts, which to my understanding is the ability to execute these compute-heavy operations that you couldn't normally do if you were querying or trying to execute it directly on-chain. So I know with fat contracts, you talk a lot about how that leads into these composable blueprints. So if you could just tell us a little bit more about Fala and your fat contracts and some of the use cases that you're enabling.
Yeah, sure. So fat contract, maybe just to explain the idea behind it, why we also call it fat contract, because it's a contract that can work in sync with smart contracts, but it's more richer than smart contracts because we actually run this contract in our decentralized off-chain network, the computation network. And we also have our blockchain and in addition an off-chain computation network. So this contract mainly runs in this off-chain network, but can be also verified off-chain. And that's why it has more features than a smart contract because you can actually connect it or it can communicate to any smart contract or can communicate smart contracts between chains. So this is where this idea of fat contract is coming from. You mentioned the word like bricks and blueprints. This is actually something that we have evolved also in the product language. We actually don't use this too much anymore. You still find it maybe in documentation, but we just said like the Fat Contract 2.0 upgrade, and we just simplify the product language because it gets complicated by itself, I guess, once you use all the tech. But the composability is actually that we have different templates that you can use within the Fat contract. So we started to implement a self starter kit. Also, we integrated the Lens API that you can run or query in this contract and then push this information directly on any smart contract on Polygon or EVM chain. We integrated several new chains actually that you can deploy these contracts on. And we will add more of these templates. So this is where the composability comes in. For example, we're working also with Airstack, and Airstack has a lot of API or huge data from APIs that you can also directly connect to this contract.
Awesome, thank you for covering that. Now, so we've talked about data indexing, we've talked about data compute. Now let's go to data storage and Kyve. So Kyve, you have, and Paul from Kyve, you have a lot of strong partnerships with some of the largest ecosystems in this industry. I think Near, Polkadot, many others to name a few. Can you talk us a bit through what is the core problem that Kyve solves for these blockchains and why do they come to you with their challenges?
Yeah, so a bit of backstory about Kyve, and I think it's interesting how Kyve start. We start on a bounty between Parity Foundation and Arweave, and the idea was like how we can store in a decentralized way historical data of blockchain on Arweave. And the main issue that we have as an ecosystem right now, I think for proof of stake mechanism network, is that archival nodes are not incentive to run. So mainly it's lead to centralization of historical data. It's also a big topic on the Ethereum community with EIP 4444 coming. And like any proof of stake mechanism network need to have this kind of solution to make sure that those data will still be available in the future for tax purposes, but also to build an indexer, to do like analytics if you want to attract like Web2 company or big institutional, because like they are not going to do an investment if they can't see the backstory of what's happened on a smart contract or what's happened on a blockchain. So mainly it starts like that, and we see more and more use cases coming out of that, so I think it's quite cool. So right now, all the data, like Kyve was just like a decentralized validation layer that was like taking the data from a data source, validate those data in a decentralized way and store them into any decentralized storage solution, but mainly Arweave, as you said earlier, we are like in the Arweave ecosystem, so quite attached to this ecosystem, but we are like fully agnostic also in the future in terms of decentralized storage solution. And now we have built products such an ELT pipeline that allow you to import all those data into any local warehouse almost. So we support more than 60 destinations, including BigQuery, MongoDB, Snowflake, MyGraphSQL, and so on and so on. And you can also now bootstrap your node in a completely decentralized way with Kyve, meaning like any chain that we have archived through Kyve, you can possibly like just bootstrap your node at any rate of any chain that we have archived in less than 2 minutes, comparing like to 3 or 4 weeks for some chain, depending on which 8 you want to go.
Awesome, thank you. So the next part of the panel, I want to highlight actually the partnership between Subsquid and Follow, which I think was announced about a year ago, almost a year ago now. So in the announcement, I think it discussed how Follow was using the Subsquid SDK in the Follow architecture. And in the announcement, it talked about how by using a flexible indexing tool like Subsquid, it will enable Follow to save a lot of energy and resources in its VAT contract. So I guess, Zoe, first to you, why is flexible indexing an important part of your architecture, and how does that strengthen the overall offering of your product?
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about quickly before the panel that this partnership, of course, has also evolved a lot, right? Because Subsquid has changed a lot on the business side, and like also the product itself, like in a positive way. So we, of course, as a user, as a customer, also evolve within the partnership. But overall, to summarize maybe how we use it at the moment is that we have several squids actually running that are still provided by Subsquid to our service. And in addition to this, we also actually recently launched our own, or spin up our own server where we actually have the Subsquid SDK or the framework running on top of it. So this is actually pretty cool. I think it's just something you launched recently, right, to offer this to your customers. But we really like how also Subsquid provides the service, so we still use the server from their side. And what we do there, or how we use Subsquid, is to mainly index specifically data from FAT contract. So as I just explained, a FAT contract, since it's connected to a lot of off-chain data and API data, we actually use Subsquid to read in a FAT contract directly how many API queries we are doing, which then shows a lot of activity that users do on our contracts. So for this, it's more like an insights that we use internally for this information. Of course, just like the amount of it, we don't see exactly what's being, like the detailed information about it. And then we also use Subsquid to actually query specific parent chains or different chains on Polkadot, because we have our index product where we it's an intent-centric infrastructure, so there we need to have or query different price information from different chains. I think this is one server. And then also for the computation, because as I said, our network is running based on this 200,000 virtual CPU power, which are all provided by community members. And we need to query these worker nodes about like how much computation is actually provided in the network. And this can also then, this actually goes into our tokenomics, or we can actually see how the tokenomics is actually being used on these computation nodes. So a lot of information that otherwise, we need to actually improve our service to the end users as well.
Interesting. Thank you for covering that. And Dimitri, in the announcement, it talked about how by using a tool like Subsquid, they can bypass using centralized RPC providers. Why is it important that not only Follow, but applications in general are not reliant on these centralized RPC providers for their blockchain data?
Well, I think, look, I can say a few words why in general indexing is like a crucial piece for building an application, which is somewhat complex. The reason is that RPC nodes are really not designed to serve a lot of traffic, and the data that you can extract from an RPC node is fairly limited. So in particular, you cannot really have any kind of aggregations or like search or like history data retrieved from an RPC endpoint altogether. So any application that needs a somewhat interesting UX or UI actually needs a rich API to power it. So in order to power this API, you need to prepare this data in such a way that you can not only represent this data, but also you can handle a lot of requests, assuming that you have some non-trivial traffic coming to your site. So this is exactly why we have indexers for pretty much any application that we know of. For example, Uniswap, like whatever, and in particular, Phala has quite heavy traffic and quite a few users coming to like see the dashboards and so on. So and then Subsquid is really a tool to efficiently transform the data that is stored on-chain into something that you can efficiently show to your users. And Basically, this is just like the way to make any application usable, and at the same time bypass relying on quite expensive RPC infrastructure, because normally you would pay something like up to like $5–10 per 1 million requests, for example, if you're using Alchemy, and this becomes really unbearable if you have anything really similar to a Web 2 level traffic. So you're basically gonna pay a lot more with every user coming to your page, because like every user generates literally millions of requests, because you, for example, need to check like the current height of the blockchain, you need to check the balances of the user, like all the information. If you just like fetch it from the RPC, that means that each user actually costs you basically like $100 a month. So, and you cannot even like run the unit economics altogether. You need to serve this data in a very efficient way. And that's exactly why we have indexers. And an indexer should be fast enough in order to make it usable for developers, because like even if it's slow, then any change in your application would require the developer to wait for 1 week before it basically resyncs and you have like a usable API again. With Subsquid, we bring it down to basically like minutes, and this is indeed powered by the possibility to very efficiently run this indexer, and this is in turn powered by the decentralized query engine and the data lake that we're serving. So we never really like hit the RPC infrastructure for this. So this is kind of a very long story.
Oh, thank you. That's
to an end. Yeah. So.
That is a very helpful explanation.
Yeah.
So I guess now going to Paul from Kyve. You work with, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of different blockchain ecosystems. But one of the problems that we sometimes see, and I know a lot of builders discuss on these ecosystems, is that data can stay within the ecosystem. What's on Moonbeam can stay on Moonbeam. What's on Near can stay on Near. From what you see in the ecosystems that you work with, what are some incentives or ways that these ecosystems can achieve or enable cross-ecosystem and cross-blockchain composability?
So Kyve also for the back, to give a bit more of context, is based on Cosmos. So for sure I'm going to mention IBC. I have to. I think IBC connection are very good. After you have so much project like doing great job, I think about Axelar, Hyperlane, but I think it's also how you make those data on our side, like historical data at one place, and not that everyone have to go at some places to take some data or run their own infra and so on to cross-chain those all those historical data. Sorry. So it's making accessible but also trustless those data, and also collaborating with people that can use those data in an efficient way. Kyve is not an indexer, for example. We can work with indexer, like the graph, for example, just released 2 weeks or 3 weeks ago a new like subgraph that you can now query data that are stored on Arweave through a subgraph. It's a cool use case. I think it's like shows the maturity also of the Arweave ecosystem as a whole. But I think more and more like indexer or builders will also fetch the data from Arweave. You have like some cool project building on it, bringing on different ways the data. You have Redstone that is doing a decentralized Oracle. You have Iris that is, we are like actually leveraging Arweave bundler also Iris on our side. All of that will make the ecosystem and all those chains interconnected more easily, and IBC would stay for me like the best option to do so also.
Great, thank you, that is very helpful. So now I want to talk a little bit about the improvements that you all are working on in your products, and how, as we are moving into, as some are calling, the next cycle, the ways you are evolving your product to help serve that cycle. I guess Zoe, first to you. I know we've talked quite a bit about in this panel Fact Contracts 2.0, some of the new use cases it enables. But what are some of the key trends that you are seeing in Web3 and blockchain and crypto right now? And how are you ensuring that Fala is evolving to serve those use cases?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So with Fact Contract 2.0, I think I mentioned it or touched on this earlier, is mainly a lot of like the implementation of the templates that we integrated, but overall actually about the developer experience, right? How can we make the product, the developer tooling already, like which Fed contract is, more accessible to developers, where we also focus a lot on the developer journey as well as the UI and the user experience. Which means that we actually abstracted a lot of the low code, or we pushed it into no code experience almost, because Fed contract itself actually is written in Rust, and of course Rust is not like the most adopted language. Of course there are a lot of Rust experts out there, but for adoption we said, okay, we actually need to abstract all of this, and now we implemented like the JavaScript template and so on, so everything that to make it much more easier for any developer to use our product, and of course then the whole user experience and the onboarding journey for the developers. Based on this is more like how we make it more, what we focus on with the upgrade also in Fed contract. Regarding trends, we've focused a lot on the Web3 social space. So Web3 social is something where we see a lot of growth. I mean, we see this already on the user data. I think around 4 million users we already have in Web3 Social. And I actually moderated a panel on Web3 Social, or dev tooling and Web3 Social in our event yesterday. And I think one panelist said that everyone that uses Web3 Social is already on default a cool person. So anyone that's not using Web3 Social apps by now definitely do so, because it is, in the end, the space, like you make money with your content, right? And this is like the biggest differentiator that we do in Web2 socials, or that we don't have in Web2 socials. So we at Phala really believe in the growth of Web3 social depths, or also the developer experience, as well as all the infrastructure. And that's why we work closely also with the Lens ecosystem and a lot of dapps that are actually launching on Lens itself. So Web3 social and user experience is our focus at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Web3 social is coming very quickly. Kaiv, I know you had Paul, I know you had your mainnet launch earlier this year, back in March on Pi Day, actually. What were some of the biggest learnings and lessons from that mainnet launch, and how is Kaiv improving on the lessons and moving into 2024 from its mainnet?
I think the biggest lesson that we had was that we have like too many people requesting our services, and like we have a long pipeline of integration going on. So we are not like enough fast shipping for them. So that's gonna be a problem, let's say. We are trying to improve that to like kind of prioritize who need us first. But we are in like data, like we see a lot lately, data availability topic, but like it's mostly like data availability sampling, like for example with Celestia that are keeping the data during 30 days. Near, that is also like one of our investors, and we are working closely with them, is a data availability layer actually. So we are like kind of in this trend, and we have a lot to do, and a lot of new partner reaching out, because you have a lot of new layer 1, but also layer 2. And I think with Validium that is keeping all those data off chain, it's also a big need for like all layer 2 to bring back those data on chain. So it's kind of how we improve as a team to like integrate more products and more like more project using Kaiv, but for that, like we are currently reworking kind of our DApp to make it more accessible for everyone, to understand better how they can like launch their own pool. Kaiv is fully permissionless, meaning if you want to launch your own pool, you just have to check our doc. The doc is always a bit complicated for any project to work on. You always need to improve it, so we are also working on that. But anyone can join, start their own pool, and start like validating data through Kaiv to store them on any decentralized storage solution of their choice. And then after, it's also like adapting to the market situation and what are the needs currently. I think the bootstrapping, the tool that we call casing that allow you to bootstrap your node, it's a great use case, but we are looking for more use cases and more stuff coming out in the next weeks, I think also. To also empower the Kaiv use cases, and we are open, like Kaiv is fully permissionless, so you can use Kaiv as much as you want. There is no cost per query. If you want to use it to build your indexer, you can. If you want to do your accounting or data analytics with it, you can. If you want to do bootstrapping with it, to bootstrap your node, you can. We are just waiting for people to build with it, and I think that will be the next let's say, challenge, but we have already big partners that are helping us with that, so it's a good thing.
Great. Yeah. So I know we are just coming up on time for this panel, so we'll end with one last question to all the panelists. And Dimitri, we'll start with you. As we mentioned earlier, there's a lot of talk right now about the next trend, potentially another bull market. A lot of talk right now about the Bitcoin ETF, potentially an Ethereum ETF. A question for all the panelists is, what is the foremost trend that you think will highlight this next cycle, and how are you evolving your protocol to be a critical part in this next era? So Dimitri, can we start with you?
We are at Dev Connect, so it's like eccentric, but I think it is impossible to ignore how strong Solana goes, right? So, and this is actually, we can't ignore either. So, Solana is actually our next big thing, and it's a beast from the data point of view. So they generate something like 100 gigabytes per day, and at the same time, we believe that we are well positioned to this because we have like a very efficient way to compress and distribute the data across the nodes in our network. So it becomes possible to accommodate even like this huge amount of information, not just for storage, but also for efficient queries, something that you can actually leverage. And in general, I think the trend is we kind of realize right now that there are like too many L2s and like too many chains, and there are just like a few dApps, and they're kind of like migrating here and there, and we basically need to figure out how to put this into like a more coherent picture, because for the user, they should be completely opaque, like where exactly this application lives. He just like needs to, for example, like trade tokens or have some really rich, meaningful experience, and probably that's gonna be like ideally spread out across like multiple chains. And like we, as a data and indexing provider, will need to make sure that developers can actually make it happen. So yeah, I think we're entering in a very interesting phase where like this craze about like L2s and rollups and like all the infra stuff that we have right now will come to like this realization, like, okay, what's next? Like we need to like put this together, and kind of something will probably die out, but we will get like a weird place from here, I guess.
Great. Yeah. Paul, same question to you. What is the key trend that you're following, and how is Kyve positioning itself for that trend?
For me, I will stay really basic. I think it will be all about data. Data availability everywhere. Right now, we see it's the big trend. Everyone is talking about data availability sampling, but also data storage. We see more and more data storage, decentralized data storage solution coming out. You have BNB chain that just launched Greenfield a few weeks ago. You have ETH storage that is building. I love their team. They win like two grant from Ethereum Foundation. Their promise is to store like more than 1 petabyte of data on ETH for really cheap cost. So it's, I think it's still like we haven't seen a real bull market for data solution. Arweave is like undervalued for me in terms of tech. It's like super, it's awesome what you can do with Arweave. So I think the next big trend for us, as an industry, will be all about data, because it's what will matter also to bring more institutional in this industry for them to have access to those data. And Kyve positioning, it's quite easy because we are already in data since we start as data validation layer, and we stick with the same products since we start 3 years ago, because we have we don't need to ship or to change our use cases, because we know that we have a use case with building decentralized archival node. Actually, after there might be some change in the future. By some change, I mean extending to other kind of data, deterministic data from Web 2 or other deterministic data from Web 3, let's see. But yeah, for me, data will be the next hot topic for the next bull run, if happen.
Great. And lastly, Zoe, with the final word. I know you've already talked a bit about decentralized social, but what trends generally are you seeing, and how is Fala positioning itself for those trends?
Yeah, I would actually just summarize this because, as you said, Web3 Social definitely one of our focus for the next upcoming year and at the moment. And then would agree or add to what Paul just said, like the data availability and the composability is something that we focus on specifically then in the Web3 Social space, because there we have so much opportunity, for example, in dApps that build that have or monetization dApps in Web3 Social, right, where you really need any off-chain information to actually pay out the person with the right requirements. So this is a specific use case that we really focus on, where we see that Fed contract also makes a lot of sense, but we need the data availability and data composability for these use cases to make them successful. So Web3 Social or data availability in Web3 Social is like the next trend for us.
Great, thank you. Well, that brings us to the end of the panel on real-world impacts of data composability. Of course, in order for crypto and our entire industry to cross the chasm and gain mainstream adoption, a lot of building needs to occur. But thankfully, a lot of that building is occurring thanks to some of these great leaders up here. So thank you all very much for coming out. I hope you enjoyed the rest of the event. And yeah, if you have questions, all the panelists will be here after. Thank you.